Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. Great Friday show for you guys today. We're kind of ending out the week. Boy, has it been an interesting week. To be sure. Wow. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a little bit about what happened in Maryland yesterday with the shooting. Something related, and just generally a trend of violence against journalists, which I think is a very good discussion that needs to be had, something that needs to be talked about, because it is dangerous to democracy. Also, we may have the real reason Justice Kennedy decided to step down now instead of wait till later. That is very interesting. We've got that story for you today. We also have ICE. A couple of stories on ICE. Well, actually, I think just one, but it has a couple of different parts to it. ICE agents are actually turning against the agency. I mean, that's the best way that I can put it without giving it away completely. But we have that. We'll talk about that. And, of course, then we have the DSA. So, very interesting numbers on the DSA's membership following the win of Ocasio-Cortez. We've got that story. That's going to be great. That is your light story. Well, actually, your light story for the day here is Marco Rubio and his response to the shooting. So, specifically to a report or a reporter who survived the shooting. We'll talk about that as well. In fact, I'm kind of rearranging that. Got my notes here for the stories. So what we're going to do is just kind of rearrange things because, hey, it's Friday. We're all out of order here today. That's what's going on. So great show for you guys lined up for the day. Got quite a few videos to show you as well. So stay tuned. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Sharing is the most important thing. Sharing is caring. It helps the show get out, and that is definitely necessary these days. Okay. Also, if you want to consider supporting us, you can use the Super Chat, or you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TYTNation, and basically become a member. Okay. And, of course, members, I will take requests on things to do for membership because I have no idea what you want to see on that. But I will do my best to make members happy because, after all, you support the show. And you're allowing me to be here today. Okay. So, now, before I get into the stories, I know I've been getting some, and I put that out earlier this month before everything just went to hell. Streaming, right? Game streaming. So I know some of you are interested in watching me do some game streams. So eventually I'm going to get to doing that. It's been really crazy this month. Summer is also really crazy. There's always something that we have to do. So I haven't gotten to it yet, but I promise you guys, I do want to do some game streaming, so I'll take some requests on what you would like to see me play. So, okay. Anyway, with that all taken care of, let's get into the show. Okay. Let's start out with maybe the real reason. So Anthony Kennedy is retiring. He, of course, is conservative justice. He's been in the court for decades. And he is, well, he's a swing vote. So, yes, he's a conservative justice, but he's been a swing vote on many decisions. He's also voted in favor of corporations almost all the time. So that can kind of show you where he's been on the scale, since this has been the most conservative Supreme Court I think we've ever had. Nonetheless, he has made some rulings that were positive. So, and it's, like I said, considered a swing vote on things like abortion and even the ACA. Now, it came as a bit of a shock, his retirement, of course. But I think what might be more shocking than his announcement is the reasons that might be underlying that announcement. Now, the New York Times actually had a really great article on what one of those reasons might actually be. Now, they explain that in subtle and not so subtle ways, the White House had waged a quiet campaign to ensure that Mr. Trump had had a second opportunity in his administration's first 18 months to fulfill one of their campaign promises. Now, what was one of those campaign promises? To stack the Supreme Court with conservatives so that conservative ideology would be protected for decades. Now, that, of course, would mean disaster for things like gay rights and even abortion. And now there's talk, of course, about the possibility of another challenge to Roe v. Wade. Well, great. Now, of course, in order to do that, you would have to have someone resign. Now, right now, the court is 5-4. So the last Supreme Court justice that died, Antonin Scalia, was replaced by Neil Gorsuch, so that kept the court 5-4 in favor of the conservatives. Now, Kennedy, also a conservative, would be replaced, and the court would still end up being 5-4. Now, the difference is that Kennedy, while yes, again, conservative, voted in favor of corporations, ruled in favor of corporations almost 100% of the time, if not 100% of the time, was a swing vote on certain social issues, for example, gay marriage. But if Trump gets his pick, he's going to pick somebody who's incredibly conservative on those social issues as well, which spells disaster for some of those other rulings. Now, in order to do that, as I said before, Kennedy resigned. Somebody who was in that vein, a swing vote or a liberal, would have to resign. Well, of course, the liberals, none of them are going to resign or retire. Justice Ginsburg is holding on for dear freaking life. And so she's like, no, I'm not going to retire. You're going to have to drag me out of here in a body bag. Or, as some liberals have suggested, just prop her up like Weekend at Bernie's until the liberal gets or progressive gets elected. I know it's sad to joke about that, but that's where we're at. It's kind of a macabre sense of humor. But anyway, now, in order to get Kennedy to resign, of course, you would have to have some pressure, right? Well, how would you pressure somebody like Kennedy? Well, it turns out, if you have a connection, that helps. Now, turns out they do have a connection. One person who knows both men remarked on the affinity between Mr. Trump and Justice Kennedy, which is not obvious at first glance. Justice Kennedy is bookish and abstract, while Mr. Trump is earthy and direct. I've never heard him described as earthy. Okay, then. But they had a connection. One Mr. Trump was quick to note in the moments after his first address to Congress in February of 2017. As he made his way out of the chamber, Mr. Trump paused to chat with the justice. He said, quote, "Say hello to your boy. Special guy." Uh-oh. Special guy. Well, here we go. Not only that, but this conversation continued with Kennedy saying, "Your kids have been very nice to him." Well, who? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. They said they love him, and they love him in New York City. He's a great guy. Uh-oh. Now, that's a little odd. So who's he referring to? Well, the New York Times explains that Mr. Trump was referring to Justice Kennedy's son, Justin Kennedy. Now, Kennedy, the junior, spent more than a decade at Deutsche Bank, eventually rising to become the bank's global head of real estate and capital markets. Do you see where this is going? Oh, we're the head of real estate and capital markets in New York City. Well, President Trump was a real estate developer before he became president and reality show host. Oh, look at that. It turns out they worked together. During Mr. Kennedy's tenure, Deutsche Bank became Trump's most important lender, dispensing well over $1 billion in loans to him for the renovation and construction of skyscrapers in New York and Chicago, at a time other mainstream banks were wary of doing business with him because of his troubled business history. They added, Justin Kennedy may have been more responsible than anyone else for saving the Trump family business during the darkest days of the Great Recession. So not only did they loan him $1 billion in loans for renovation and construction, he may actually save the Trump business and the Trump brand. No wonder they have such nice things to say about each other, Trump and Kennedy. Not only that, but Trump's praise of the senior Kennedy was also part of a campaign to ensure him that his judicial legacy would be in good hands should he step down at the end of the court's term that ended this week. Now, that is very important. The term of the court ended. And so he will be stepping down in July, at the end of July. So there's a midterm coming up, however. And that's interesting timing. So originally, I'll wait till after the midterm. So that the voters can have a say in whether or not they want Trump to pick a certain kind of justice. Well, it appears the voters are not going to have a say. He's not going to wait till the midterms because he is stepping down at the end of his term. Great. So, now, let me get into the other factors here that could be influential. For example, Donald Trump, in news that is not widely well known, but when he became president, he got the ability to appoint other justices. Now, that gets little fanfare in the news, but actually it can be very important filling district court judge positions. Now, it turns out that after Trump became president, he began appointing law clerks that had worked under Kennedy. For example, Judges Stephanos Bibas and Michael Scudder, both of whom have been confirmed, and Eric Murphy, the Ohio Solicitor General, whom Mr. Trump nominated into the Sixth Circuit this month. They were all Kennedy clerks. So they followed in the mold of Kennedy. At least they followed Kennedy. And there was a connection there. Furthermore, Judge Brett M. Kavanaugh, the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit Judge, and Judge Raymond M. Kethledge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati, are also former Kennedy clerks and are on the list to replace Kennedy. Oh, no, don't worry about it. Step down now and, do it before the midterms where it's easy to replace you, and we can replace you with clerks that you know. So your legacy is secure. So that's what's going on. I see. Now, of course, Kavanaugh is actually incredibly conservative on social issues as well. For example, Kavanaugh in 2017 was one of three dissenting judges on a decision that allowed an immigrant teenager to get an abortion. Now, she was pregnant, she was an immigrant, and she wanted to seek an abortion. Ultimately, she was able to. However, Kavanaugh was one of the judges that dissented, and he said the majority had, quote, badly erred in this case and created a new right for undocumented immigrant minors in custody to, quote, immediate abortion on demand. Well, now, wait a minute. Do you hate anchor babies or do you love anchor babies? I mean, that's kind of what that ruling was about, strangely enough. But he says, no, I'm very, very pro-life. So I'm going to have this immigrant teenager, this undocumented immigrant, get born on American soil. which would have made that immigrant child a citizen. Okay, well, there you go. Now, the overall point and context that I bring that case up in is that he is stringently pro-life, which could cause issues if a challenge to vote Roe v. Wade ever comes up to the Supreme Court. And that could take a few years. So, look, those are just a couple of replacements for Kennedy. Those two specifically were law clerks to Kennedy, in a way to show Kennedy that, hey, don't worry, your legacy's safe. We have your former clerks. But, look, no matter who Trump chooses out of this list of at least 25 potential justices, it could spell disaster for decades to come on gay rights and reproductive rights. And knowing that there's a possibility that Kennedy did this on purpose and decided, oh, no, I'm not going to wait till the midterm, and we're going to do it now. So here's a big gift to Donald Trump, who's good to my boy. My boy gave him $1 billion in loans. Well, that's a pretty damning legacy to leave, if that's the case. But if it's true, then, look, I guess we know what kind of person Anthony Kennedy is. We know that he's more loyal to people than he is the law, than he is to even his previous decisions, which somebody who follows him will very likely overturn. But I guess all in the name of friendship and money. At least now we know. Okay. All right, let's continue. Now, on Thursday, it was reported that a gunman had opened fire at the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland. Now, the results of that attack was devastating. At least 5 people lost their lives, and several others were injured in what was considered a targeted attack. Turns out the gunman had a long-standing grudge against this particular newspaper outlet after they had published what was freely available information about his charges. So without getting into too much detail, staff at the local paper said the attacker, who was armed with a shotgun and several grenades, shot through the glass door into the newsroom in what has been deemed as the deadliest attack, or one of the deadliest attacks on a U.S. media publication in history. Now, following this attack, Sean King, who was an activist on Twitter, shared what appeared to be a clip of Dana Loesch, who had advocated for violence against journalists. In fact, he said, quote, she denies it. I'm sorry. He said, number one, let me be clear here. Then NRA's Dana Loesch has absolutely called for journalists to be beaten to death. And he said that on Twitter alongside of a clip from NRA TV. Now, he says, she denies it, but the record is clear. It's just that she's so flippant with such violent threats that she has perhaps lost touch with what she has said. Now, what did she say? Well, we've got the video right here. Take a look for yourself.
I said this actually on television not too long ago. I'm happy just frankly to see them curb stomped. I mean, let's be real about it, Grant. These people are the worst thing that could ever possibly happen just to the American political system right now with the way that they cover so many things. For instance, when nobody gets a fair shake on policy. No one gets a fair shake where it concerns immigration. They conflate illegal and legal immigration. They conflate a number of things, particularly the coverage on gun control. I have so many things that I hate about mainstream media. There is no way we are going to fit it in the allotted time today. They are the rat bastards of the earth. They are the boil on the backside of American politics. I have no other nice way to put it.
Well, to be fair, there isn't really a nice way to put that. Yes, we get it. You hate the press. They call them rat bastards of the earth and a boil. Now, what do you do with a boil? Oh, you lance it. So, look, I know. She's like, well, I didn't call for any violence here. I just said that I wouldn't mind if they got curb stomped. All right, well, look, if you want to use that as hyperbolic language, like, oh, what I meant by that wasn't necessarily violent. No, it was that they got beaten at their own game. Okay, great. Well, look, you could have left it there and it would have been like, okay, look, I get what you're saying, but you are using violent language. But then she goes on to use even more violent language. So, look, she may not be explicitly calling for violence, but it's open for interpretation. And are some people going to interpret it as a call for violence? Yes, I think so. Look, this isn't just a critique on the media, right? You want to critique the media? I critique the media all the time. I tell you, I don't think that they're doing their job correctly. I think they try way too hard to be neutral, which means they bring on a nutbag on one side and they bring on somebody else with facts and they tell you to decide. In fact, they try so hard to be so neutral. And it drives me crazy because there are some things where you just can't be neutral on, and that's of course facts. But she's not complaining about that. No, she says the opposite. Oh, they're fake news. They're so dangerous. We're so tired of this terrible stuff. I mean, the rat bastards. And the poor gun people, we never get a fair shake. Ever. No. But here's the thing. Of course, I also have a problem with bias, right? So, look, I have a bias, and I'm very open with that bias. But mainstream establishment media also has a bias, and that bias is establishment. They have an establishment bias, and they tend to defer to people in power. That's my problem. But I don't want to get rid of the press. No, I just want the press to do a better job. I want them to report facts, and I want them to report everything in context. That's it. I want to make the press better. Calling the journalists the rat bastards of the earth and saying that they're a boil, which, again, you lance a boil to get rid of it, that is calls for violence. And that is dangerous. It's an incitement. And look, this isn't the first time that she has incited violence against journalists. In a video posted on Twitter by NRA TV back in March, Loesch told every living member of the media that they have, quote, had enough. We've had enough of the lies, the sanctimony, the arrogance, the hatred, really, the pettiness, the fake news. We are done with your agenda to undermine voters, really. Will and individual liberty in America. So to every lying member of the media, to every Hollywood phony, to the role model athletes who use their free speech to alter and undermine what our flag represents. Again, this is crazy talk because she doesn't. Anyway, she's willfully ignoring what those protests were about. To the politicians who would rather watch America burn than lose 1 ounce of their own personal power. To the late night posts that think their opinion is the only opinions that matters. To the Joyanne Reeds, the Morning Joes, the Mikas, to those who stain honest reporting with partisanship, to those who bring bias and propaganda to CNN, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, your time is running out. The clock starts now. Your time is running out. Now look, again, she was promoting her crappy show. But consider the way it was framed. Wearing all black background, all that stuff. I mean, look, will crazy people get the wrong message and do so? Yes, that's why they're crazy. There are no sane mass shooters. There are no sane terrorists. You have to be insane to go and carry out an attack that actually hurts and kills fellow human beings. Right? So, and there are so many people here in America that, and look, we don't have more insane people than, say, other countries like Japan and or the UK. But what we do have is we have a population that is armed, where we have 250 million guns in this country. and not enough mental health care to take care of the people that we do have that have mental issues, that have some sort of issue. So that's a bad combination. And are these people able to be incited to violence? Yes, very easily. Very easily. And look, it's not just Loesch, by the way. She's not the only problem. She's just the face of the problem, right? Or she's the current face of the problem. Actually, it's now baked into the right wing, their DNA, to attack the press. Now, for example, Milo Yiannopoulos, I didn't do this story, but he said he couldn't wait until armed vigilantes started roaming around and shooting journalists. That's just a couple of days before what happened in Maryland. Look, it's a coincidence, sure, maybe. But when you start talking about that, and by the way, he comes out and says, oh, no, I was just trolling. No, you're not trolling. That's dangerous rhetoric. Now, again, they're not the only one. Greg Gianforte, you guys remember him. He physically body slammed a journalist. He actually did physical harm against journalists. Guess what he's doing now? He's a congressman from Montana. He still got into office, even after body slamming a reporter. Not only that, but you also have Michael Grimm, who thankfully did not win his primary. He threatened to break a journalist in half, like a boy. You also have that kind of rhetoric coming from the President of the United States himself, who says that journalists are the enemy of the people. The enemy. This isn't isolated. This is a pattern. It's a pattern. And you know why? It's because authoritarians hate the free press. And of course, they often either incite or employ violence to people, to members of the press that call them out. That's the problem. For example, we've all seen Trump supporters advocate for the deaths of journalists. For example, there were shirts where people during the election that said rope tree journalist, some assembly required. Again, that's part of the pattern. And the threats have even gotten specific. Within hours of Thursday's murders, BuzzFeed writer Ann Helen Peterson tweeted out that she was threatened. Quote, I've had people email death threats, threaten to cut my dog's throat, and tell me I'd pay for my fake news. You don't think that has anything to do with the rhetoric against the press, thanks to the president, thanks to the right wing? Imagine if a left-winger did that to a right-wing politician. Everybody's hair would be on fire. Oh my God, how dare you send death threats to a right-winger? And by the way, don't. We're not like them. We're better than they are. But that's what's going on here. And it just gets excused. Look, not only that, the New Yorker wrote about a reporter for the hometown paper in Grand Junction, Colorado. Now, the reporter had covered a 2016 Trump rally and saw her fellow citizens screaming out-of-town reporters saying, hang them all, electric chair. You think this is not a pattern of violence? You think that these people are just kidding? You think they're all just trolling? Saying, oh, no, yeah, that whole thing about hanging journalists? Oh, no, I was just trolling you, bro. No, I didn't mean that. No, they do mean it. They do mean it. Look, there's even John Ederle, a good friend of mine, host of the Damage Report on the TYT Network. He's been getting his own death threats since Thursday. I'm pretty sure I'll get some too. If not, if I haven't already. Look, the whole point is it's dangerous to be a journalist because of the threats and the rhetoric like this. Power does not like to be challenged. And when you challenge power, especially right-wing power, that's when the violence comes out. That's when the threats come out. And living in a country where there are so many guns and inadequate mental health care to boot, and a president and a party that stokes hatred against the free press is scary at best. And this, unfortunately, is what right-wing authoritarianism breeds and how fascism begins. You start targeting the free press. That's the road to fascism. So if we want to stop that, if we want to actually protect our democracy, we protect all of our democracy, even if we disagree. But we all should agree that we need a free and open press. Because if we don't, that's when we run into problems. Okay. I'm going to take a break here. We'll come back. We got Marco Rubio. A little bit of a fun story on this one. And then we'll come back and we'll do more. So stay right here. Come back. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Make sure to, if you haven't already, please like and share and use the super chat to help the show. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Stay right here. Welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here, T Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Let's get back to the stories. Okay. Let's go to Marco Rubio. Oop. So yesterday there was a shooting at a news agency, the Capital Gazette newsroom in Maryland, And there's been a lot of different responses, but one of them that I'm going to talk about today is Marco Rubio. Now, he decided to respond to the massacre of 5 journalists with calls for civility. Well, that's interesting. Now, what happened is he said, well, what he's responding to, actually, is one survivor who said, quote, "I don't know what I want right now, but I'm going to need more than a couple of days of news coverage and thoughts and prayers." This is reporter Celine Sanfelice talking to CNN. She worked there, and she said, quote, "Thanks for your prayers, but I couldn't give a fuck about them if there's nothing else." Now, Marco Rubio saw that, and he was like, for shame. For shame, for shame. In fact, he said, "Sign of our times, the F word is now routinely used in news stories, tweets, etc. It's not even F asterisk 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 anymore. Who made that decision? Who made that decision? Oh, maybe it's just people wanting to express themselves. You ever thought about that? Oh, no. Decorum, decorum. Civility, civility. We need decorum. How dare you say the F word after watching your friends get shot?" And now, of course, Twitter was not happy about that. Ben David Grabinski tweets in, "Dead kids and journalists don't bother Marco. You know what does? Profanity. How dare you be profane?" Alan Greenwood said, "It's just locker room talk, isn't it?" Yes, that's exactly what it is. Locker room talk. That's all it is. George Soros, a little bit serious. He says, "Who the fuck cares? Trump invites violence and hatred towards the press, and yesterday 5 people were killed. Grow up and get your priorities in order, asshole." Molly Jong Fast said, "Pay no attention to the autocratic president undermining democratic norms and calling for the murder of journalists. Salty language is the big problem." Yes. So much of a problem. So terrible. 5 people getting murdered, not a problem. Just as long as you don't explain it with an F word. Allie says, "It's called invective language, and it's an embarrassment that this person lives in our house. You're offended by the F word? I'm offended by your lack of morals." And one more thing, and I love this one. Ezra says, you doing anything to stop putting kids in fucking cages?" So, look, the reason I bring this up is you have politicians right now that are more worried about lack of decorum than people getting gunned down. "Oh, dear, I must say, sir, that language is so uncivil. How dare someone who saw their friends get murdered in front of them have to use a curse word? Use a curse word. What are you? Like, are you not a human being? Do you not ever curse? If Marco Rubio, I would be surprised if Marco Rubio stubs his toe and says something like fiddlesticks. Oh, golly gee, that hurt. No, dude, be a human being. But see, he's not a human being, or at least he doesn't act like one. He actually is more like an empty suit stuffed with NRA money. That's who Marco Rubio is. And that's the problem, right? The NRA gives millions of dollars to people like Marco Rubio. So that, when another deadly mass shooting happens, and it's going to happen, and it continues to happen, we have a mass shooting essentially on average every day in America now. So they get paid money, though, to come out and whine about decorum. Let's not do anything about the guns. No, let's do something about your salty language, you potty mouth. You know what I say? Fuck your decorum. Fuck your thoughts and prayers. And finally, fuck you, Marco Rubio. Eat a dick. I think I'm pretty clear. Okay. The less we have to deal with people like Marco Rubio, the better. You know what I should have mentioned too? That he spent part of the presidential campaign talking about how Donald Trump has a small dick. Why didn't Where's your decorum then, Marco? Anyway, let's move on. Something serious. Oh. Now, what began with the call from progressive activists to abolish ICE, culminating with the win of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who included that in her platform. She's actually the first major politician to actually include that in her platform. That's something Bernie Sanders has not done. It's something that a lot of politicians who are progressive have actually not called for. So that was a bold move. It was a bold strategy, and it actually paid off. Now, many Democrats, in response to that, and even some ICE agents themselves, have called for the ending of the agency. In fact, according to The Hill, at least 19 U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement special agents have signed a letter to Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen calling for an end to ICE and to shift the work that it does to other bureaus. Now, that's interesting. Now, they say investigators have been perceived as targeting undocumented aliens. I'm sorry, let me go back here. They said that they were concerned that the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration was preventing them from carrying out other duties. They said investigators have been perceived as targeting undocumented aliens instead of the transnational criminal organizations that facilitate cross-border crimes, impacting our communities and national security. So this has been essentially turned into deportation force. And they're saying that. It's like, no, this focus on zero tolerance at the border is taken away from the other shit that we actually do, stuff that's actually we think is important. Now, the agents who signed the letter are members of Homeland Security Investigations, that is a section of ICE. Now, agents in the division work on crimes like drug trafficking, cyber crimes, human smuggling, according to the New York Times. Now, the agents suggested that Kirstjen Nielsen create a different agency, a second bureau, just for investigations, and another for immigrations and immigration and deportation. Now, I say just get rid of ICE completely. Gone. We don't need it. We didn't need it prior to when it was created, almost 2 decades ago. So, no, we don't need ICE. Get rid of it. And that's what other Democratic politicians are calling for. In fact, Representative Mark Pocan last week introduced a bill to eliminate the agency. That's great. That's actually legislation. Now, not only that, but here you have Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, Kirsten Gillibrand is widely believed to be running for president in 2020. Now, earlier today, I'm sorry, not today, but earlier in the week, she was talking about it with Chris Cuomo. Here's what she said.
She's also got some positions that are even to the left of Bernie Sanders. She wants to get rid of ICE. Now, what are you going to do with your party if you do come into a majority and you have a significant number, or at least an influence, of people who have that kind of a position?
Yeah. Well, I agree with it. I don't think ICE today is working as intended.
Well, you think you should get rid of the agency?
I believe that it has become a deportation force, and I think you should separate the criminal justice from the immigration issues, and I think you should reimagine ICE under a new agency with a very different mission and take those two missions out. And so we believe that we should protect families that need our help, and that is not what ICE is doing today, and that's why I believe you should get rid of it, start over, reimagine it, and build something that actually works.
Or just do none of those things other than abolish ICE. That would be great too. Because look at what they're doing. They're not just going after the bad ones, right? No, they're going after green card holders. They're also prosecuting babies. Yes, they're bringing, there's a story of a 6-month-old, right, who has been arrested by ICE along with their parents for crossing the border illegally. And look, because of Trump's, immigration order, his zero tolerance law, there is now a 6-year-old that cannot represent themselves, obviously, and is being represented by other people that are being dragged to court for immigration proceedings. There are 3-year-olds climbing on court tables because guess what? They're 3. And yet they're being asked, why did you cross the border illegally? They don't know. They're 3. Or they're 6. They're 7. And yes, there are older kids too. There's 12-year-olds, but they're more of the unaccompanied minors. And so, of course, they can't have their families in court because their families aren't there. But the 3-year-old who has their parents there, no, they're being separated. They're being tried separately. And Donald Trump wants to get rid of the judges, by the way. I mean, the whole thing is insanity. That's why one of the ICE's lawyers is like, no, I'm not going to prosecute 10-year-olds. I'm not going to prosecute 6-month-olds, toddlers. I'm not doing it anymore. We have crossed the veil of insanity. I'm not going to do it anymore. In fact, that same lawyer says I'm going to actually represent the children that are being sent away, that are being prosecuted. Look, this is unbelievable. And again, it's because of ICE, and it's because of Trump's zero-tolerance policy. Gillibrand's actually right. They are the deportation force. Remember, Trump, during his campaign, said, let's create a deportation force. It turns out he didn't have to. He already had one. ICE. They are his, essentially, brown shirts. Now, if you don't understand, if you're on the side that doesn't understand why the left are now saying, hey, you know what, it'd be a great idea, we should abolish ICE, as well as end this policy, well, then you're either incredibly ignorant or you don't think that there's a problem with putting 6-month-olds in court. And if you're that type of person, well, then you have no hope. Okay. So let's go to some good news for our final story of the day. Now on Tuesday, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won a stunning upset against Joe Crowley. Now, Joe Crowley is the number 4 Democrat, was the number 4 Democrat in the House, and he's going to take over for Nancy Pelosi, or was very likely to take over for Nancy Pelosi. Now, however, that's not going to happen anymore, and the reverberations are being felt all through the establishment. Now, one of the effects of that is the DSA. Now, what's the DSA? It's the Democratic Socialists of America. Now, one of the effects is that they have seen their membership skyrocket since Tuesday. Now, the 28-year-old member of the Democratic Socialists of America, who won in New York's 14th district on a platform of Medicare for All, abolishing ICE, a federal jobs guarantee, as well as many other progressive positions, has inspired a major boost in membership for the organization. According to Lawrence Dreyfus, a program associate for the DSA, the organization saw a surge of 1,152 memberships on Wednesday, about 35 times more signups than on an average day. So look, it doesn't sound like a lot, but then you realize it's one day, and it's 35 times higher than they have ever seen before. Now, the last major bump experienced was in the month following President Trump's election, during which they had about 6 times more signups than in the previous month. So there are now people that are looking into the Democratic Socialists of America. In fact, the DSA, after Ocasio-Cortez's win, is one of the most #1 research terms. Like, what's democratic socialism? In fact, I'm going to get to this. There's a video out that explains what democratic socialism is, and you won't believe where it's from. But first, they say that the DSA has ballooned from some 5,000 members in November of 2016 to now over 40,000 nationwide. And now, they said the left-wing group's growth has been attributed in part to broader resistance to the new administration, as well as wider acceptability of the label of democratic socialist, championed by Senator Bernie Sanders. And now, let me show you an example of how wide it is being accepted. This video was on MSNBC. Watch.
The term democratic socialism was the most searched term on Merriam-Webster's website. So what are we talking about here? The word most people focus on is socialism. But while democratic socialists pull some ideas from that ideology, they are not traditional socialists. There is no call for communal ownership of production. Here's what else it is not. Communism. Most people use communism and socialism interchangeably, even Karl Marx. But communism is a political ideology, while socialism centers more on economics. They're related, but none of this has to do with democratic socialists. What they do call for is the enactment of certain socialist ideas through the democratic process, meaning everyone has a vote on whether they are a good idea or not. In many countries, democratic socialists work alongside other parties in broad coalitions. Their goal is to control prices of essential services like medicine, banking regulations, affordable education, and the ability to work. All sounds reasonable. All of that is in the effort to minimize economic inequality and allow everyone in society to not just survive, but have the ability to thrive and enjoy life, a concept they call bread and roses. And if you think some of these ideas are too alien to American culture, take a look at this. Social Security is a pension system run by the government. Medicaid and Medicare are government-run medical services. Even Amtrak is a government-owned transportation system. All of these are hallmarks of democratic socialist policy.
Wow. So, again, that's MSNBC. That was amazing. And I think for the most part, they got it right. There is some differences between social democracy and democratic socialism, but I'm not going to really get into the weeds on that. But hey, you know what? The point is, MSNBC actually explained it in positive terms. Hey, you like that Social Security? Hey, you like that Medicare and Medicaid? You like public transportation? That's socialism as part of democratic socialism. It's not something that's terrible. It's not something that's evil. It's just something that, hey, guess what? Benefits the entirety of society. That's amazing. That's amazing. And you know what that shows me? It shows me that the left is ascendant. Leftist ideas of common sense, of goods, and services, I should say, that are essential for human life, could and can and should be socialized. It's not like anybody's asking for someone to make sneakers or computers or cell phones, the government. No, it goes alongside of capitalist systems, and it protects people who are vulnerable. That's what the whole point is, to make sure that people have things like housing and food and healthcare, no matter if they make money or not. That's the whole point, because it's a public good. And people, when approached with that, are like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? No, I really don't want a health insurance company being able to decide whether or not I can have a treatment based on how much money I have. In fact, look, these insurance companies, they actively work out against you. They don't want to pay out claims. Whereas the government actually wants to make sure that you are taken care of, that you are healthy, that you get the health care that you need. Whereas, as I said before, insurance companies make their money off denying as many claims as possible. Why is that a system that is commoditized? Why is healthcare a commodity? Why is education a commodity? It shouldn't be. And in every other industrialized modern country, they have those public goods that are socialized because they know that's an investment in their people. We in America, we do not. But that, I think, might be changing. Because look at this. Democratic socialism was the number one search term. You have democratic socialists that are winning in their races. And even high-profile races, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has shown. Those ideas are ascendant. Those ideas are becoming mainstream. And look, let me show you. Among those who've achieved political success as part of the DSA are Lee Carter, elected to the Virginia House of Delegates in 2017, Summer Lee and Sarah Innamorato, both who defeated long-term incumbent Democrats in Pennsylvania. And the wins continue to come. DSA, Our Revolution, leftward candidates, Justice Democrats, etc. All these different groups and all these different candidates are winning in Democratic primaries. And not only that, but they're also winning in general elections as well. Not all of them are going to win, but a lot of them have been. Our Revolution has a win rate of around just over 40%. And for an organization that is fairly new, that is amazing. That is a great track record. It's because these ideas are popular. Medicare for All has a 63% approval rating among the American electorate. 75% among Democrats. You have all these different policy positions, free college, a living wage, that have majority support in America. That's why the left is rising. And of course, they are incredibly scared. The establishment and the right wing especially. But look, it just shows you that if you run on a platform that is bold and progressive, then you have a better chance of winning. So this progressive platform, by the way, is something that the Democratic Party needs to adopt, or else they will get left behind. Okay. That's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. If you haven't already, please like and share. I do have a super chat here from Mark Ortiz that I want to read real quick. He just says, "Fuck Trump, ICE, and Dracula Pauly Shore." Thanks, Jeff. Who's Dracula Pauly Shore? Is that who? Like, I'm unfamiliar with that reference here. So if you could explain that, because I'm old. I don't know. Get back to me on that one, because I'm gonna have to look that up. So look, again, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you haven't already, please consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/T18Nation. That helps the show, helps keep us on the air. So that's it. Have a great weekend, guys. Stay cool if you're especially in my area, because it's supposed to get real hot. So, keep hydrated and all that stuff. And have a good weekend. And we will see you guys on Monday. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, T18 Nation. Have a great weekend.